Thank you for joining us for live paranormal radio. From the paranormal to the unexplained, it all happens here. It all happens here. Looking to enhance your radio experience? Participate in our live video chat 24/7 with our live paranormal radio show hosts and other like-minded people. Live. ParaNormal.com, the only interactive social chat room supported by Full Interaction Media. Stop by now and join the fun. Stop by now and join the fun.
Hello, everyone. This is Niki Paranormal, and you're listening to My Paranormal Experience Radio, and I am joined by my wonderful other host, Jenna.
Hi, Niki.
Hello. How are you today?
I am so excited.
So am I.
It's like Christmas, New Year's, my birthday, all wrapped into one.
I know, right? I am so excited. Why don't I have you introduce our guest, and I'm actually going to bring in one of our other guests here in just a second, but I figure I'd let you get through an introduction beforehand.
Oh, okay. Today we have on our show two of my favorite YouTube people. I read their blog all the time. It's Erik and Elesa Medhus, and they are two of my favorite people because I've just been reading them, following them for so long, and I really consider Erik sort of like a life coach to the living, and sort of like a bridge between the living and the dead. And his mom has written 2 books along with Erik, and they've been translated by his spirit communicators, and we have one on today, and her name is Kimberly Babcock. And I'm just so excited to have them on and talk about their book and talk about their whole experience and Erik's just journey.
Me too. I'm going to go ahead and bring you on. And we have already been joined by some of our other people today. So hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Guys. We are so excited. I just want to let you guys know, like, last night going to sleep was like Christmas morning, like when you're a kid and you're like, it's Christmas Eve and you can't go to sleep. That's what it was like for us last night, and we, talked about it a lot this morning.
I know. I tossed and turned all night, and I was like, I couldn't wait, and I just wanted to, today to hurry up and come. It was, so awesome.
Oh, you guys are adorable.
No, honestly, you guys literally are some people that I have been dying to meet. I just feel like I know you from just reading everything and watching your videos, and I really admire your work so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes. That's great.
Yeah. How are you, Kim?
I'm good. I'm doing well, and Erik's already responding as you girls are talking about how excited you are.
Oh, yes. Oh, great.
Oh, boy. Well, I think I actually might have been pranked by Erik because we were talking about it the other evening. And Jenna was like, hey, Erik, you've got to prank her, okay? And I'm like, okay, prank me. I said, I'm waiting for it, prank me. And it happened that night, and it was really crazy because my son witnessed it, and he just looked at me. I was standing there, and we're talking, and these papers, we're not touching the table. And these papers, one by one, start, like somebody was, slapping them into the floor. And my son's looking at me, and he's like, Mom, what is that? And I was like, okay, Erik. I was like, oh, my gosh. Of course, my son's looking at me like I'm nuts because I'm like, okay, Erik. And it was just
that's
so funny.
Awesome.
Well, I hope you made Erik pick those papers up.
If those up, you'll really blow my mind.
No, really. That'd be funny.
And at the same time that Niki was being pranked, or around the same time, my phone was on 30%. I'm like, I need my charger. And I'm looking, and I knew I had it at some point. And I'm like, because I'm a person of habit, and I always do the same thing all the time. And I'm like, where is my charger? I couldn't find it. I went upstairs and downstairs several times, and then I went up for the 3rd or 4th time, and it was right there on my bed where I had looked numerous times. And I'm like, Erik, thanks a lot. Good one.
Oh, that's one of his most annoying pranks.
Yeah, definitely. And then we didn't know that each other were pranked, and then because she had a show, and afterwards we talked about it, and I'm like, I was pranked by Erik. She's like, I was pranked by Erik, and I'm like, well.
Yeah. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
So, Erik, what do you have to say for yourself, young man?
He goes, "You're welcome." And whichever one of you was saying, when you were talking and saying, "I feel like I know you," he kind of got real sarcastic. He goes, "Yeah, I feel like I know you too." So he's just being his goofy self.
Love it. That was me, Jenna. Yeah, I really do. I feel like I've studied Erik. I don't know. It's weird. But he's awesome.
So silly.
Yeah.
He's like, "Studied me? That's kind of creepy." And he's like, "Nah, I'm just joking."
Well, we are rather creepy at times. We talk about how sometimes, we feel like we're creepy because we're like, we do a lot of research on our guests and we're like, wow, I feel like I know everything,
Well, I mean, not for nothing, but Niki and I do talk to spirit a lot. We do ITC and we do communicate with the other side, or attempt to anyway. And so, I mean, if that makes us creepy, then we're creepy. But you guys are also creepy spirits because, you're looking in on us. We don't know. You see us in some times when we don't want to really be seen, but, you're there. So, I mean, the creepy thing goes back and forth, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of laughing. He's just like, "Let's be creepy together," but he's like, "No harm intended."
Love it.
So, Erik, this is your first book your first book, but it's also written from the afterlife. So, how do you feel about that? How are you just excited? I mean, what emotions do you feel right now having your first book published and it's being so well received?
Well, as he starts to respond to you, there's just a flood of information coming, so apparently he has a lot to say about this. He puts his hand over his chest, over his heart, and he says there's so many emotions, I don't even know where to start. First of all, he gives thanks he says, I have to thank my mama for taking the time to put this together. The work that you put behind this, he says, means a lot. He's like, because I know you're so busy, but what you did and what it took for you to get this together and out there, he's just passing along gratitude, saying thank you.
Yeah, it's not easy to type when all your fingers are like chicken drumsticks, So I'm pretty much the secretary of the three.
He's like, no, but seriously.
You, Erik.
He's like, thank you. He's like, oh, he got real slow. He said, I love you too, Mama. But he wants to take a minute to thank you, Elesa, and all of his family because of how much time this did take. And he's like, I know it took time from you. I know it took a lot of effort. And he's just thanking you in a huge way. And then he says, on the other hand, he's like, there's so much going on about this book where I am. He talks about other spirits with him that kind of applaud him for being able to, he says, pierce the veil and be able to get a message out and a perspective out in a bigger way. So he's like, it's really cool to have support from where I am and also support where you guys are. He's like, it means the world to me to bring comfort to so many people. He's like, so I'll try to filter the language. But he says it's pretty effed up how scared so many humans are. So many humans are so scared of death and dying. And he says, what I'm seeing happen is this is relieving some of that fear. This is providing more comfort. So he says, that's huge for me to be able to comfort people like that.
That's amazing.
He just keeps saying, I'm grateful. Like, I'm grateful to be able to have gotten my message out, he says. He's like, but I'm not done yet. I ain't even done.
No, that's awesome. We want more books, Erik. We want more everything. We want more Erik. We want 100% more Erik.
Yes.
I think that, you have an important place in life and in where you are, in the afterlife, where you are sort of bridging, and I talked about it before, you're bridging the gap between the living and the dead. and you're sort of coaching us on how to live our lives better. And
can I interrupt for a minute?
Yeah.
He's like, dead? I'm not dead. He's like, come on.
Well,
but he's just laughing.
All right. You just, you're here without a body, all right?
He's
I can't, yeah.
He's like, I'm going to call you out. He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to call you out. I ain't dead.
All right, you got me.
Go, Erik, go.
No, that's cool. I love it.
But
how do you feel about? Oh, sorry. Go on.
He's just kind of building on what you were saying, that he feels like that's a huge part of his purpose right now, is bridging that gap and helping people realize that physical death is really only a birth to a new existence, a new kind of existence. He said the only thing that really stops is that body, that vehicle. He's like, he's talking about how he says, you know how like as you grow up and you age, like the body feels older, but inside you still feel the same. He's like, and once you shed the body, you still feel the same, he says. So I want people to understand, he's like, I want to give as much perspective as I can and paint the biggest picture I possibly can by telling everybody what it's like. He says, being able to build that bridge for people means a lot to me, because it's bringing comfort. It's softening people's fears about the afterlife. And it's actually, he says, it's actually provoking some curiosity as well, and opening up people that weren't previously open to exploring spirituality in the spiritual realm.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of readers have contacted me, a lot of people who have read the book, to say they are no longer afraid of death.
Yeah,
so
I feel the
cool.
same way. Yeah, I feel the same way, Elesa. Like, after watching your videos and his description of death and dying, and basically just how he describes it, going over to the other side, I really have lost that fear. And I think that description alone provides just a sense of comfort. Now, as his mother, like when you heard his description of his passing, and did it provide you like some sense of comfort that he was free and he was you know what I mean, no longer in pain? And
that's a great question, because I felt two ways. First of all, he provided so many details about his death, very graphic ones that I wasn't aware of. So it was really hard for me to transcribe that part of the book and go over the proofreading and all that. It was just very painful. In fact, there were times where I contemplated just stopping and not going on with it. But knowing that his death didn't hurt, that it was painless, that he was free, of course, was the other side of the coin. And I'm just so happy for him. I really am. By the way, the book is called My Life After Death.
Yeah.
It's a memoir from heaven. And it's all Erik.
Yeah, it really, I just, it really is Erik, and it really does describe in his voice, what he went through and what he's doing, and, and just how he felt and how he feels, And I love hearing his voice and how he thinks about everything. I think it provides a really unique perspective. And, there was a segment there where I was reading, and he really puts it all out there. And I'll say this, it's the part where he was talking about right after it happened, and he saw himself above his own body, and he was looking down. And he felt free and he felt happy. But then in that moment, he looked at himself, and he realized that he hadn't thought about the other aspect of it, how he would look to you, and how he would be found, and how it would appear, and he didn't take any of that into consideration, and I think people don't think about that. They don't think about how the other side of the coin, like the people that are living.
Right, the impact that it can leave. Yeah.
That's true. It's almost like he was in a trance toward that path to pulling that trigger. And you don't think about those things when you're in a trance. You just think about what you're going to do, and that's the way it was. But to your point, it is cool hearing Erik's voice, because the rest of the book, transcribing it, was nice, because I felt like he was just sitting in the living room with me talking. And then I think a lot of readers feel that too, that this is a dead dude that's, well, not dead, don't bust me, that is just hanging out and telling you a story. And you know, with Erik's colorful language and all.
Yeah, and Erik, you're not, just by the way, Erik is not limited to any type of speech on the show. We're not governed by the FCC, so he can say whatever.
He can let it rip, because I know I'm the same. I totally understand. It's hard to hold back.
Yeah,
we good to know.
Whatever we want.
Good to know.
He's got his match with me. Okay.
No, but the thing too that do you find yourself, like, I feel like you have conversations with him almost daily, which I know I lost my mom a few years ago in 2010, and I would give anything to have the kind of conversations that you have with Erik, like, on a daily basis. I mean, I just think that you're so lucky to have these visits and these, like,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So powerful. And I know, because I also lost my fiance, and, you know, I would love, in fact, I talk to him like he's standing here, and he talks back to me, but, you know, to have that validation, you know, that you receive with the messages from Erik, it's just, it's truly, it's a beautiful thing.
I am so blessed. I don't have the gift that Kim does. Oh, Kim is just amazing. But going through her, well, you're welcome. You deserve every bit of that and more. But going through her, you know, obviously I talked to Erik, but I also just talk to him myself and hear him in his voice. Sometimes it changes back and forth from my voice to his voice, but usually it has to be in the bathtub, because my mind don't slow down nowhere else.
Now, Erik, I have a question for you. Like, how are all spirits able to communicate in the way that you do with your mom, or is that something that has to be learned on the other side? You know, the ways that you communicate with, like, the turning on of the faucets, the showing of the signs, like the pranks and that. Is that something that, like, you have to be sort of higher elevated, or is that something that every spirit does or can do, but maybe they just haven't learned yet?
He says every spirit is able to communicate in many, many different ways. He says, now, to what degree they interact with humans on the earth plane kind of vary. He says, first of all, it depends on their willingness and their want, basically, to be as connected to the earth plane. He's like, for me personally, he says, I want to be more connected to people on the earth plane, so that he's like, stop calling it earth plane, just call it earth. So he says, I just want to be more connected to people on earth, because they're still in their physical life. They're still in that physical existence that can be harder than shit, and I just want to help them through it. So he says other spirits can help and intervene in certain ways, and he said the degree in which they interact with you is basically two parts. He said it's based on your openness and your invitation. Also, he says it's based on their desire and their want and their need, their ability. He says there's a learning process you have to go through. You have to learn how to do things. You have to learn how to manipulate and move things, or just make your voice be heard or your presence be felt. He says those are pretty easy things to achieve. So it's really up to the spirit and what they want to do.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have my loved one just be able to communicate in the way that Erik does, because I think that that's so wonderful to get those gifts of just, you know, knowing that they're there and knowing that, you know, they visited you, that type of thing.
Well, I think it helps Erik, that the fact that Erik is supposed to be, well, not supposed to be, nobody's making him do anything, but that he is a spirit guide working closely with humans kind of keeps him here on the earth a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
he says to both of you girls, the one that said something about had lost a mother and then one had lost the fiance, he just says, you know, if you're wanting to hear and you're wanting that validation like my mom has, he says just open your heart to it. He says don't convince yourself that it's you making something up. And he says don't convince yourself that you're wanting it so bad that you're looking too far into things. He says just open your heart up to it, believe it, and you'll get it.
I think he might have hit me dead on because I felt like I've wanted it so bad that it's almost like I feel like I'm, you know, and I've been told even, you want it so bad that you're never going to get it. And I'm like, well, geez, thanks, you know.
Oh, that's not fair. But, you know, it's interesting what Erik has told me before is that, you know, everything is energy. Everything, you know, emotions, matter, you know, the earphones on your head, we are, and so are expectations. And it's a really dense energy, and it vibrates at such a low frequency, it's really very dense for a spirit to get through.
Mm-hmm. Wow. No, and that's what happened to you, right? When he first passed, everyone else was getting signs, and you weren't getting signs because you were grieving.
Exactly. I was, you know, it was very complicated because I was the one that found him. I was the only one that saw him, and it was, you know, I have PTSD from that. But, yeah, of course, a mother losing a child, I think they're the ones that, not always, but I can speak for myself, that that's the worst thing that can happen to a human being, the worst. So, yeah, it took me a while. Plus, being a skeptic, you know, I'm a doctor, so I explain everything with science. So, you know, if it didn't exist, if I couldn't perceive it with my senses or measure with an instrument, and I was raised by atheists. So, you know, I didn't really have, although I wasn't an atheist, I didn't have any concept of life after death. So that means I was not very open.
Right. And your husband, he was a skeptic as well, right? He didn't believe at first.
He believed more quickly than I did, because I think he had the first experience with Erik, and you know, he's a pretty open-minded guy.
That's awesome. And that's what happened with me too, with my mother. She came to me in a dream a couple of days after she passed, and it was sort of like a very vivid, lucid dream where she told me that she was okay and she was going to be with me for as long as I needed her. You know, and that was comforting in itself, even though it had just happened. But, you know, you want to continue to have that dialogue, you know, and I've been waiting for something like that. And it's just, you know, I just think that with Erik, I can learn a lot from. I think that, you know.
We all can.
Yeah.
Everyone can. I really feel like everyone can.
Yeah, he has a very important message to put out there, and he needs to keep doing his work and putting things out there, because I think that people need to hear it. There's so many people that have suffered loss, and especially today, given that today is what today is, you know, for our country, you know, I think Erik's message is especially important. That, you know.
And we have 73 million baby boomers who are getting older. They're grappling with their own mortality, so this whole subject has really come to the forefront, especially when there's so much science coming out now and being published that sort of bridges the gap with spirituality, that, you know, what is the soul made of? Oh, well, it looks like it's made of neutrinos, and the soul is attached to the cells in the hollow spaces in these tiny intracellular structures called microtubules. So there's a lot of science out now that's helping Erik's message resonate. But one thing I did want to say is, when you were talking about relationships with your loved ones, I think that's the biggest thing I learned from his book, is that they're not really gone ever. They just don't have a body, and you know, we can and we should continue to have a relationship with our loved ones. And I think we'll see a new era where we do that. It's like, hey, nice funeral, see you tomorrow.
Right.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Exactly.
And can Erik tell us do all spirits pretty much visit, like, go to their own funeral? Are they with their loved ones after they through the process of, like, the funeral and all that? Because I've heard that before, where someone has said that people always go to their own funeral.
Well, then I hear about the life review, so I'm dying to know all of these.
Yeah, I want to know. Yeah, I want to know about the life review and the funeral aspect, etc.
He's like, well, okay. He's like, I heard a lot of questions in that couple of questions. Like, basically, he's like, you just opened a can of worms, but he's like, I'll try. So there's a couple of things he wants to address, because you had said, do they all go to their own funeral? But then I thought they went to the life review. He's like, well, that's because you're thinking time is linear. He's like, but in fact, it's not. So it's not like you can only do one thing at a time. He says, let me start with the first question. Does every spirit go to their own funeral? He says, if they need to, yes. If they need to in a way to come to terms with what's happened or to provide comfort for a family that's really hurting, then they'll be there. He says it's really, again, it's based on that spirit's needs. If they need to be there, yes. Most of the time, we choose to go there just because it helps you come to terms with the processing of it all. He says, but not always. It's not something you have to do. And then he says the life review, again, that's something that he says when you're ready, it's almost like he makes me feel like you're kind of picked up and put into that situation. So it's not something that like, okay, here's the first step. I go to my own funeral, then next is the life review. He's like, again, that relates to time as linear kind of thinking. He's like, it's really about what you're ready for. If your soul is ready for that review, then you'll be taken through it, he says. So he's like, it is kind of a two-part thing, what the spirit needs to do to come to terms with everything and help process, but it's also, if some of my loved ones really needed comfort through the funeral, of course I was there to do that, he says. So he says, like, I can't really speak for every other spirit, but in general terms, he says, they can choose to be there if they need to or they don't have to be. He's like, it's not a mandatory step.
Okay. Now, when you say about the life review, if you led a not-so-stellar life, when you're shown that review, does it reflect that?
He goes, yeah, it fucking sucks. He's like,
reality. Boom.
Wow. So, sorry. But, I mean, just
no, that's
honesty,
fine. No.
Yeah, he says, he says, if you made some bad choices and you intentionally did things that, and then he even goes off on a tangent there. He's like, but can you really call it a bad choice? He's like, things might have been called bad by humanity, but you were supposed to experience it for a reason. He says, so, if you had a particularly difficult life as a human, he says when you review that as a spirit, it's hard. He's like, it's hard to walk back through those steps and go back through those times and then feel it on an outside perspective, feel it outside of yourself and watch yourself go through it, watch yourself make those decisions. He says it brings a whole new understanding to why you did some of those things. He says even though it might be difficult, he says it really makes your energy pure, like more pure, a higher vibration, because you gain this huge amount of understanding of who you are. So it brings you to such a fucking pure, more pure part of yourself. He's like, I can't describe it. Once you really deeply learn who you are by watching your own review, he's like, you shed all of those lower vibrations and feelings attached to decisions and things like that in your physical life. He says, then you really step into this more pure vibration. He's like, sometimes it's not easy, though.
Yeah, back to what you say about the perspective, just to make it clear, when he talks about feeling it outside, you actually feel the other person's emotions and all their senses, what they're tasting, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, everything in response to whatever choice you've made toward them. If you've called them a dick or whatever, I mean, So
yeah, he's like, thanks,
like
Mom. He's like, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be painful to have to review, especially if you were not a nice person in life, and then you had to reflect on every single nasty thing you said to somebody, and go through it and feel it. I think that would not feel very good.
Yeah, he's like, basically,
there's no bad and good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says basically you're put in their shoes. You're still you, but you're in their shoes. You're looking through their eyes, and you're feeling through their emotions when you called them a dick, or when you turned them down, or when you stood them up. He's like, you have to feel what you made them feel through their own senses. He's like, it's this really bizarre out-of-body experience kind of thing. But he said, you're right, Mom, there is no good and bad. It might be termed bad because of humanity, but he says, or because of society, but he says, really, everything has purpose. Even if it seems bad or wrong, it still has a good purpose.
Because I guess you could understand it, for example, if you called somebody a dick, that maybe that was a spiritual plan to behave that way to that person so that they learn how to be more assertive or learn more about friendship or loyalty. So everything that's labeled bad is, like I say, no bad or good. It just is, and it's a lesson. They're just beautiful, beautiful lessons, all of it.
Yeah. Now, he always talks about how time is linear over in the spirit realm, and we are on this, like, our standard time frame or whatever. So that means just he can be anywhere at any time, or he can, like, it just doesn't exist, right? Time does not exist, like, days of the week. There's nothing like that over there. Is that what
Yeah, he says for us, time is a forward-moving thing. Like from this hour to the next, it's a forward thing. Or if we think about the past, it's on the line, we go backwards. But he says here there's really no forward or backwards. You just exist. You just are. So if I know my mom's going to be here at a certain time, he's like, I can try to create a schedule to keep me in line or in tune with her, but it's really just the thought that puts me there. There's really no travel, he says. It's not like I go from point A to point B and it takes me 20 minutes to get there. He's like, it's just the thought. And then now he just talks about dividing his energy. If I think about being with my brother, I can be there. At the same time I'm thinking about being with my mom, I can be with her. So he says, he's like, this was really hard for me to understand for a while. He says, and understand, how time works or actually doesn't work here. It's so different than what you're used to, he says, on Earth. But once you get the feel for it, he says it's actually pretty damn cool.
Sounds pretty cool. Wow, I could just think of all the things I could get done. Like, if I could manage to pull that off now, I always say, like, I really don't like sleeping because I can't seem to get enough things done. But wow, I mean, do all those things. That sounds pretty neat.
No, I know. I know, but so he never gets tired? Like, do they get tired over there? Like, is there a feeling of that or no?
He says no. He says that's more of a human thing because the body gets tired, but the soul, the spirit, is like sometimes you need a lift bump, like lift you up a little bit. But that's more of a human thing, that getting tired. But he's like, for me to divide myself and be with multiple people or be in multiple places, he's like, I don't really deplete. I don't diminish. My energy really doesn't get affected, he says.
Oh.
Not like you, when you guys try to multitask, it really wears you out.
It could be an epic fail, so I'm definitely thinking that I might do okay if when I get over there, I can do all the things I need to do. I feel like I need to do, that's, wow.
All right. I'm going to ask one of the most asked questions by people when they want to know about the afterlife, and I'm sure Erik is going to go into a great deal of detail about this. Is there a heaven and hell? because everybody has their belief system, which is usually brought on by religion. And is there a physical place that is heaven with the pearly gates and all of that? And is there a hell of, with the fire and the brimstone?
Blazing Inferno.
Yeah.
But just was his latest YouTube, actually. Is there a hell? So take the floor, Erik. I know he has lots to say about it.
Yeah, he's like talking so fast. Okay. First of all, he says, is there a heaven or a hell? He's like, no, not really. He's like, hell, no. Like, no. He just says that. He says it's partially what you need to experience when you pass. He says also shedding the ways that people are brought up and the ideas and concepts that they're conditioned to believe or imagine. He says shedding that and getting people to think outside of that is really hard. He says, this is what it's like. He says, like, I'm trembling because he is so jacked up right now. He's so okay. So he says when you pass, it's not like you're waiting in line to get through these pearly gates. He's like, again, because waiting insinuates time is linear. You don't have to wait. Mm-hmm. He says everybody is received in a different way, and it's based on what you need to feel and hear and sense and all of that. He says, so if you need to be suspended in nothing for a while in complete darkness and blackness, he's like, that's not hell. That's just, you need time to process. And then he says you start to get a little bit curious about what's going on or where you are, where is everybody. He's like, and then people, spirit people will come in to help. He says, there's not really this big throne, this big pearly gates, this big angel singing and trumpets playing. He's like, it's really tailored to what you think, what you need, what you need to see or feel or hear. Then when he talks about hell, he's like, it's funny how he addresses this question, because he scratches his head and he's like, he talks about a spectrum, but then he also is like, it's more of a spectrum. There's really no fiery hell. There's no suffering. It's just a lower vibration. He says, like, there's this spectrum that everybody falls on somewhere. So lower vibrations are on the lower end of the spectrum. Higher vibrations are on the higher end. So he's like, there's not really a hell. There's just lower vibrational areas, lower vibrational places. And these lower vibrational places and people just need to open up a little bit, open up their curiosity to come to a higher vibrational place. But again, he says it's going to be tailored to specifically what they need.
Okay. Awesome. So when they go across, it's not predetermined where they're going. It's just what they're open to? He
says partially predetermined by what you're open to, but also he says everybody's here for each other. He says we're all one. We're all the same thing. We're all energy. So he says spirit, when they cross, he says, okay, for example, if somebody is suspended in complete nothingness and all of the rest of us can see that and know that they need to go through that and they need to process. He says, but then it's like these signals come on, and these signals are what call in other guides to help them. It's like a light. He's showing me like a red light and a green light. Like right now there are red lights on, you're not supposed to really interfere, and then a green light comes on, and that's when the spirit begins to question things. Where am I? What's going on? And he says that's when you know it's okay to go in and help, to go in and guide. He says you can show them around, you can show them all kinds of cool things. He says, and again, and that's where we get into perspective. It's still going to be different for that person, their experience. Okay.
Now, I saw something recently on the blog, and Elesa, I wanted to ask you this question. You had interviewed Lucifer, and along with Erik, And is there someone that you would absolutely refuse not to interview, like that just goes against like your belief system, or are you pretty much open?
Oh, no, I'm open. That was Patrick. Patrick Dehan interviewed Lucifer, but we plan on doing it as well. Mm-hmm. But, the only person I would interview him, but I would not publish it, is Mohammed.
Okay.
I would not do that. I think it would be very dangerous. Okay. You know, look what happened to the Danish dude that did the cartoon. So,
yeah.
The threats he got. So that's the only one. Otherwise, I'm open. I have like 400 people on my list. So.
I know. I was going to say, I've got lists like that, too, of places I want to investigate, people I want to communicate with, and, of course, my to-do list. And they all just get longer and longer.
I know, girl. I know.
Well, the Lucifer one was interesting because just in general, because people always have this perception of the devil, and I just use quotation marks, of the devil, because they think he is like this scary person who is out to get you, and he is going to kill you, and, you know, all this stuff. Because I'm in the paranormal world. We deal with people who say it's Satan all the time. Like, everything is Satan.
Everything's a demon.
Everything is Satan. It's all negative, and yeah. Right. So to see this vision of just Lucifer as sort of a fallen angel, and that's really what he was a fallen angel, and just to have the perspective of that, and not make him so scary as what humans make him, and by a story.
Right. Looking at the true story, the true, what we know to be the case is that a fallen angel. I can't imagine that a fallen angel looks all that scary. Something that was formerly an angel to me would probably not necessarily be, really scary.
Well, he does say that there are negative entities, and I hate to use negative because then that passes a judgment on it, but there are entities of lower vibration that feed on negative emotions like fear, and so they will conjure up this image of a demon with claws, etc., so they can evoke more fear, so they can get more, that latch onto you more and get more energy and so on. So I don't know if Erik wants to talk more about that or if you want to hear more about it.
Yeah, I would like to hear more about that because I think there is a definite fear about the negative. I'm not going to say negative. I'm just going to say grumpier.
There we go.
Well, I think of Monsters, Inc. Isn't that the movie with the little kids that, the monsters come up and they scare and the kids scream and they capture the screams and they take it back and it runs like electricity in the town?
There we go.
So it's kind of like that,
That's true. I love that movie.
Me too.
I want to know, how do we handle that? Do we just not play into them? Like, do we just sort of ignore the grumpier ones? Like,
how do we know?
Yeah, and how do we know?
Erik says, first and foremost, he says, if you feel like you've come across something that makes you uncomfortable, he's doing air quotes. He says whether you call it negative or lower vibration. He says if you feel like you've come across that or come in contact with that, he's like, first of all, remind yourself, don't just react. Don't freak out. Don't scream. Don't run. He says that tends to put off. He says like, okay, chill. He's like, I know that's hard to do, but he says it puts out like a burst of energy when you just freak the fuck out. He's like, so try to reside in love no matter what you do, because there's really only love or fear. He's like, so if you act out of fear is a lower vibration. It's going to get stronger, and anything attached to fear, wanting to create fear or existing in fear, will get stronger around you. Then he also talks about the perspective thing again. He's like, sometimes image can be really misconstrued and skewed from truth. So what he means by that is he says, when you have these horrific images in your head, sometimes they're not as bad as you think. Sometimes that's your own mind playing with you and creating these awful images. He's like, so if I can tell you anything, he's like, don't go asking for anything lower or, seeking for it. He's like, just remember to try not to react. Try to maintain a calm, no matter what. If you feel like you've come in contact with that, don't react. He's like, just remind yourself that you exist in love and you don't exist in fear, and anything that does isn't a part of you. He's like, because it can be a really tricky thing to maneuver through. It can be kind of a difficult thing to figure out why you're going through it, because he makes me feel like there can be times where lower entities can attach to or trail. He says trail humans.
Yes.
So he's like, just remind yourself to exist in love and be good and be higher. He's showing peace signs. He's
and you
like,
can also tell them to get lost too, right? I mean, I think that's what you've said many times before. It's just they even lower entities have to respect or do respect boundaries, right? They say, I don't want you here. You're not welcome here.
Yeah, he says exactly. He says that goes both ways. He says even if you feel like a loved one is doing things and it's your brother or whatever, but it's kind of creeping you out or it's disrupting your sleep, he's like, you can tell him to chill and respect your space, and it has to be abided by, he says.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Thank you, Erik.
Thank you. That actually is very, very important to know. Thank you. That actually relates to something that we're kind of dealing with. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Now, Elesa, what do you have to say about skeptics out there? What evidence do you have that it's him? No, I believe it's him, and Niki believes it's him.
Totally.
But,
gosh, there's been so much. Well, in an actual radio interview, and this is on YouTube, the host called me after the live interview and said that when she heard the recording, she noticed there was a loud voice on it. And we didn't hear anything of that nature live. Uh-huh. And so I listened to the timestamp she gave me, and, there was Erik saying, "Minions!" really loudly, and the spirit translator repeated exactly. He's calling them minions. So that's
so powerful. But right there. I love it.
The main thing I have is a blog member told me a year and a half after we had a certain session that she heard 3 voices on it. 3 other voices, and I thought, well, that's impossible because it was just the spirit translator, Jamie Butler, and I. Mm-hmm. But I listened to it, and, there were 3 voices. One of them was definitely Erik's. I mean, I know the sound of my own kid's voice. It is just classic Erik. Even the way he said breakfast was his way. He says it like a little kid, like breakfast instead of breakfast. Mm-hmm. And his verbal tick that he had was there. I could hear the pacing. He was an incessant pacer. And so the cool thing is we had that analyzed by a sound professional, and he indeed agreed that the 3 voices, including Erik's, were not human. They didn't leave voice signature, for one thing.
Right.
And another piece of evidence, I'm talking about the evidence, we've seen things like appliances work that are not plugged in, and, airsoft BBs manifest at the ceiling and fall down. But those are not, I'm talking about things that are recorded that you can show people over and over again. Another one is a picture of him as an orb. Right after his death, I was walking to his bedroom, and why I wanted to go into that bedroom again, I have no idea. And my daughter, Michelle, was following me. She and Erik were really, really close, and she picked up on his energy, felt his presence. So there happened to be a camera on the table in the hallway, so she grabbed it and started snapping pictures. And one of the pictures showed this really bright orb with a long tail, which implies movement. Now, if it was a speck on the lens or a dust particle, whatever, it's not going to have this long tail. So I got that analyzed by a photography expert, and he said when he took all the gamma out, whatever that means, he said that it proved that it's its own light source, and you can even see it in that gamma filtered out picture that it's casting light on nearby structures. So those were enough for me.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
I actually have, that is incredible. I thought your analysis of like the voices and everything was great. You know, there isn't a lot of resources. I've been looking for resources to analyze EVPs and different orbs and things like that, and I think that's great that you were actually able to get that evidence. That
I was really lucky to find the right people, and real recently, Dr. Craig Hogan analyzed the Minions one and said that, and compared the voice to everybody else's voice, and he said that Erik had actually used my vocal tones to create that.
Oh, wow.
Sound.
Oh, that's
cool.
really
cool.
Yeah, he's doing studies on EVPs right now. So
I have my own little study going on, so that's incredibly interesting to me.
Awesome.
I also come from a medical research background. I worked in the medical field, so of course everything I'm like, you know, doing my own trials and my own studies, if you will. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, I know. EVPs are always fascinating to me, how they happen, and just, you know, where they appear, and sometimes they come right through your headphones, which are cool, you know. So it's awesome to, like, after the fact to find it, but it's also awesome to hear it, like, right in the moment as well.
Oh, totally. I've had that instance happen where I was actually on an investigation and they were using a pendulum, and I heard the answer before anything could have responded. They asked the question, and I heard a man yell, "No."
That is cool.
And I was in a field in Gettysburg, in a field on the battleground.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like looking around like, okay, I knew where everyone was. I knew that I was with only one male, the rest were female, and I knew that it didn't come from him. And he was actually the one holding the camera, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, and I look over to the side because it's where I heard it, and I'm like, I know the answer. Like, I went, the answer's no, before the pendulum even swung at all. And they were like,
that's awesome.
What? And I'm like, I heard it. And then they played it back, and then they didn't, you know, they analyzed our evidence. And you can hear it. It's very faint. So I was like, I'm not crazy, because of course I thought to myself, I'm hearing things.
Right.
You know, and Kim, how has it been for you through this journey? You know, being able to communicate with the other side. How is it to, you know, kind of, if you will, we'll use the term come out about it. I mean, how is
Yeah,
that
no, seriously,
process?
there was definitely a phase where I had to come out of the closet to my friends and family and tell them I was speaking to people on the other side. So that was challenging. I and my husband's family are strong Catholics, and you know, what I do isn't really seen as a good thing for them. Yeah. But I persevered because I know what's happening is real, and I have faith in what's happening, and I feel a hugely strong connection to the other side, and it just continues to grow by leaps and bounds with Erik's guidance. And, you know, just recently, after reading both books, especially after reading the second book, My Life After Death and Memoir from Heaven, you know, that one really kind of, it just made me feel so much more connected in knowing that this isn't just a spirit. This is a human with a story and a family that went through a tragedy. And then, you know, for him to describe that detail by detail from the other side really kind of anchored my connection with him, because I felt like I was connected to his humanness after reading that book, and then also more strongly connected to him as a spirit, even though I've never met him in the physical life. So then I just feel like I know when he's around. It's really solidified my relationship with him, my friendship with him, and you know, there's many things that I'm still learning, and Erik just jumps right in sometimes without even request. And he's just there to help. He's there. He's so good for some reason at bringing clarity. When I can't get clarity in my other readings, he just pops right in, and he'll do the speaking for the other spirit, or he'll kind of be their translator. And yeah, it's been pretty incredible. So, you know, I am honored to be partnered up with him and do whatever I can to give him voice and to work with Elesa and help promote these books and his story, because it's powerful. It's turning a new leaf, and it's helping people shed so many different kinds of fears.
It's definitely beautiful. It's a beautiful gift to have, and he's providing a beautiful gift to everyone, whether it be on the other side or whether it be here. And I think that the gift that he gives is going to help people that we're never going to have the opportunity to meet on this earth here. Okay?
And you know what I love?
He's making leaps and bounds. It's amazing.
Right, and I love how, as a child always needs their mom. They always need their mom for help or guidance or whatever. And I love how it's obvious that hasn't stopped. Like, just because he is where he is and he has all of this knowledge, he still needs his mom. He still needs his mom to help him. And
I'm always there for you, baby.
Yeah, seeing that through these books, and that's just what he's talking about right now, is how nothing changes the fact that he still needs his mom, and the ways that he does that and shows that he needs his mom to help him get his message out. I think it's pretty incredible.
Now Jenna and I both, I think, are about to lose it.
No, because I was just thinking about, if he knows that how a child needs its mother, then like a child who's lost their mother, I would hope that the mother on the other side knows that feeling as well.
Oh,
and that's what I was just thinking.
I'm sure.
We actually have some listener questions for Erik, because we asked some of our listeners, and I asked one of Erik's blog members that I'm friends with if they had any questions for Erik, and I got a few questions, just like 4 questions for Erik and Elesa that had come in. One was from Michael Johnson. He's a regular blog person over at on Facebook. He does the Channeling Erik blog group, and he had a question: how do they feel about my Smile Sundays?
I was just going to say, Michael Johnson has the most beautiful smile. I was just going to say that.
I didn't hear your question. What was the question?
Oh, Erik, he wanted to know about how you feel about his Smile Sundays, where he does Smile Sundays. Michael Johnson. He's a member of the blog.
He says when he talks about Smile Sundays, he gets really warm and mushy. So it's like, and he says that this is whatever, because unfortunately I'm not quite familiar with this, so I'm not sure what I'm talking about, but I know that I can hear Erik plain as day. So Erik says the whole concept behind it is, he says, it has a ripple effect. It's warming people. It's just changing people's hearts. It's warming their hearts and making people feel comforted, making people smile. He says, and he says you're doing one thing that's really important. He says this is the purpose behind it. I don't know if you realize it or not, but you're creating connections between people. He says that's really important for people to feel connected to somebody or something. He says that's really important in a physical life, and that's what you're doing, man.
Oh, that's awesome. And we have one from Jody Smedley, and it's more of a request than a question. She's all the way in Perth, Australia, and she said, could you ask Erik if he could grab my dad, Norm Carroll, and tell him that I love him and miss him, and get his backside over here and into my dreams so I can talk to him. LOL, love and light to you all.
He says, he's like, of course I can, but don't forget the power of your own voice.
Yeah. I have my friend, I'm not butchering her name, Vanessa Hogel. She's a psychic medium, and she's a remote reader, and she wants to know from Erik, am I doing right by the people who have passed before me? Ask if I'm helping.
He says, of course you're helping. You are helping. He says, if I can give you any advice, he says, work on trusting yourself and trusting your information. When he says information, it's more about what she's getting, what she's hearing from all of her clair senses. He says, trust it because it's already there for you, my dear.
That's exactly what I told her.
I told her too. I thought she's amazing. I'm like, I don't
actually every one of those things, so that's really funny.
Yeah, I said you're dead on. I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how you even have doubt in yourself. Like, you're.
He says to tell her that she doesn't need proof anymore. She doesn't need validation anymore. Just to, he says, shed the fear of being wrong. He says, drop that fear and trust in what you're doing because it's already working. It's already there.
Awesome.
Awesome. And one final question again from Michael Johnson. He said, my other question is, telepathically, could we send messages from afar?
He says absolutely. You can send messages from afar. People can receive them from afar, but it's going to depend on. And he is attaching this to humanness. So assuming that this is a human related question versus two spirits telepathically communicating. He says it's just going to depend on your state of mind and what you're doing. If you're super busy and super stressed out, you're not going to receive telepathic messages. But if you're a little more calm and able to open up and hear, he says then you're basically going to make that connection. He's like, it's like two radios coming in on the same station, coming in together.
Well, Erik, I will speak for myself when I say you're welcome in my home anytime you want to come by, anytime you want to hang out. You're welcome to just hang out and chill. You are a cool guy.
Totally.
Yeah, you can come visit anytime.
He's like, cool, do you have Doritos? That's great.
Yeah, I got you. You're more welcome to come over. In fact, I'll buy you some.
I will get Doritos and whatever snack food you want, I will put it on the table, bro.
He likes his junk food.
He will
so
fit
funny.
in here great because I've got two boys, and let me just tell you, that's actually one of their food groups is junk. That's their favorite food group. So
it would be funny if I put Doritos on the table and told people they couldn't eat them. They're Eric's, and they're like, what? Sorry, they're Eric's.
And then the next day it's gone. Then the next day the plate is empty.
There you go.
It's like Santa. That's kind of what Erik is. He's kind of like Santa Claus in a way.
Well, he was our Santa last night.
Yeah, he was our Santa.
We were so excited, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And I'm like, okay, and he pranked me. It blew my mind, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to talk to you. I want you to talk to me,
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I love the way he pranks Niki because she's she's a skeptical believer. So she needs to see something literally before her eyes that cannot be.
Well, that's why cannot be
myself.
I can't investigate through other people. I've got to go do it myself. So I want to see it with my own eyes. I want to feel it. I want to experience it. So when she said prank her, I'm like, okay, prank me, Erik. Bring it on. Let's do this. And then the papers, literally, it was like making it rain. That reference. That's what I did with the papers in my garage, and my son is just standing there. He's 15, right? So, of course, nothing shocks and amazes a 15-year-old, right? Not anything around their mother, at least, So he's standing there, and he's looking at him, and his eyes are he's got these huge eyes anyway, and they're just getting bigger and bigger, and he's looking at me, and he sees my hands, and I'm just like, and I pull them up before, I'm hands up, I'm not doing this. And he's like, Mom, and I was like, okay, Erik, I got it. And my kid looks at me and goes, even bigger, weird, what? And he's like, Mom, and I'm like, it's Erik. I was like, he's pranking us. He pranked me. He's pranking you too now. And I was like, he's like, paranormal? I said, if you will. And he goes, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I just,
that's great.
Yeah, he does all these wonderful things. Now, I know we're up, our hour is up, which makes me so sad.
No.
I know. Erik, if I could keep you around all the time and just talk to you, every day, I would.
Oh, yeah. Erik's more than welcome here. It's always Jenna and I are on Skype a lot. You come communicate with us if you want to come hang out. We're game.
Yeah, and Elesa, you have been so amazing to talk to.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. You have too. You guys are fun.
Yeah.
Thank
when we
you.
talk over
Thank
to
you,
the
all
other
of
side, you and us are all going to party. Y'all look like you know how to party.
Yeah, we'll have a drink. It's a spiritual bar.
Sounds good.
Kim, I think Kim, did you get a new website?
I did. It's kimsdivineconnection.com, and that's where you can find all my contact information. Real quick, Erik is saying thank you for answering questions. Thank you for bringing up questions from the blog members. Thank you for acknowledging them, he says. He says, of course, thank you, Mama, for being here, being where you are and doing what you're doing.
I love you, Steve. I love you so much.
And before we go, we want to just mention that Channeling Erik is at channelingerik.com. So that's channelingerik.com. And then he's on YouTube as Channeling Erik. And on Twitter, his mother is on Twitter as Channeling Erik there as well.
And Erik is spelled with a K, though.
Yes. I'm going to have that noted everywhere, too. And also, you tell everyone where they can get the book. The books that are
wherever books are sold.
Okay.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, most of the brick-and-mortar stores. Uh-huh. And, I didn't write it, so this is not bragging, but it is a gripping page-turner of a book. It is, people have told me they couldn't put it down. They didn't go to work the next day because they didn't sleep all night. Oh. They cried. They laughed. They're no longer afraid of death. I've just gotten so much incredible feedback about the book, and I'm so proud of you, Erik. You've done such a wonderful, wonderful job. Yes. And I could hardly get you to write 2 sentences for school.
The one thing he needs to work on is being able to sign his books. Now, that would be amazing.
That would be cool. That would be pretty cool.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone. This has been absolutely awesome. I also, during this interview alone, have laughed. I have teared up. I have gone into deep thinking, and it's done all of the above for me as well. And thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Erik. I love you.
Thank you, Elesa.
Thank you, everyone.
Erik says thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.